Okay. All right. So I really want to talk about this. I think it's important and could possibly lead to something even more important in the future. So maybe you've heard the news, but the United States government, through Trump's deft negotiating hand, has taken 10% ownership of Intel, the largest American chip foundry. Historically, this is pretty rare. This has only happened previously in times of emergency, like the 2008 financial crisis, where America got percentage stakes in some of the major banks they were bailing out, then eventually would sell those stakes. But this is kind of an uncapped, no emergency situation. We're just taking a large ownership stake with the government in a private company. And I want to talk about what that means. I want to talk about why it happened. I want to talk about where it's going forward, okay? First, we got to talk about chips. These kind of chips, not the kind that you eat. Very important. Now, this is kind of a base primer. You might already know this, but it's worth saying, okay? Some people, like Jensen Huang and NVIDIA here, design the chips, and some people, some companies, make the chips. It's like TSMC in Taiwan. They have these big, gigantic foundry clean rooms where they actually make the chips, okay? So designing and making, producing are different things. You might design it here in America, but then it would be made in Taiwan. Now, let's stretch this out a bit and notice who's on the design side. So the biggest chip designers in the world are like NVIDIA, AMD, Apple, Qualcomm. Now, all of these companies are American. Pretty cool. Good for America. All right, we have a lot of world-class chip designers. But who actually makes the chips? Well, pretty much all these companies use TSMC, actually. If I'm using specific examples, pretty much all these companies use TSMC. TSMC has a massive market share, so it's all made in Taiwan. But behind TSMC, you might find companies like Samsung in Korea or SMIC in China. And then way down the list, not able to make the latest and greatest chips, not even able to make very good chips, to be quite honest. Really bringing up the caboose, the rear, is Intel. That is our American version of a chip foundry. This is not ranked top 4. Intel is even farther down. Intel is the biggest American chip foundry that can actually produce chips. They've had a very rough past few, honestly, decades. Since their peak and their prime, they've been on a slow but steady downward spiral. They've lost engineering leadership. They no longer can design the latest and greatest. They have process errors. They're late to new technologies, and they've slowly but surely been losing market share, losing customers, getting worse. And they've fallen behind, the world leaders in being able to create the great chips. This is a problem because being able to make the chips is probably, in the world we're heading towards, even more important than being able to design them. The ownership of the production of the chips is very important. Like, for example, if TSMC were cut off to the rest of the world, it would cripple all of these companies. It's very important for national security reasons to have some ability to create your own chips within at least your sphere of influence. So both presidents of the recent last 10 years, Trump and Biden, have known this. It's not a one-sided Republican or Democrat thing. Both political parties in America have recognized this. This is Joe Biden stunned. He's seeing the face of God as he looks upon these Intel chips by their old CEO. Sleepy Joe, in addition to Trump, have said this is important for national security reasons. And during Biden's administration, they had a thing called the CHIPS Act. And the CHIPS Act was designed to use government money as grants to get chip companies to build in America. Pretty much all in Arizona. So the idea was, we give you grant money, you create American jobs, you build in America. They gave grant money to TSMC to go build in America. They gave grant money to Intel to try and catch up in America. The idea was like, we're going to give money to all these different areas and just try to get some chip building in America. That's the idea of the CHIPS Act. And they said basically what I've said here. We rely on a very small number of factories in Asia for almost all of our sophisticated chips. It's untenable and unacceptable. It's an economic security problem. It's a national security problem. And we're going to change that. Okay, that was the plan. And there was some success. This is a TSMC plant in Arizona that I believe just went operational this year, or maybe it's just about to go operational this year. However, don't get me wrong, there's still problems. They were able to use the money to convince them to build here. The problem that TSMC says is that Arizonans don't like to work as hard as people back in Taiwan. They've had a lot of logistical challenges. But the main part is that Arizonans don't like to be on call 24 hours to, for this insanely detailed process and have to show up. It's a little more complicated than that, but again, that is the core of it, is they can't find the talent they can from Taiwan as they can in Arizona. But it is still moving forward. They're still building, they're still planning to be a production facility for Apple's chips, not their latest and greatest, but some of Apple's mobile chips are going to be built in Arizona at TSMC Lab. So there's things happening. Now, while this was happening, while this CHIPS Act was happening, Trump was very against it. Trump said overall, the CHIPS Act should be killed. All the money should be used to pay down debt. Just take the money, pay down debt. Now listen, it's a complicated situation. You could make the argument that the CHIPS Act was possibly ineffective or the money could be used elsewhere, and maybe paying down the debt's a decent idea. Let's see if he sticks to that idea of paying down the debt once he gets into the office. Because, as we know, we are now in the Trump era, and Trump was right about everything. So, here we are, 2025. First year of Trump 2. This is the new Intel CEO, Lip-Bu-Tan. I will say, people say this guy's gonna be better. He's got an engineering background. He might be a better CEO than the last one. However, I've heard this before. They've gone through like 4 CEOs in 5 years or something. The last guy was also from an engineering background. They said the same thing. He's gonna turn it around. He's the new engineer that's gonna come in and fix Intel. Intel's in a really bad spot. There's a deeper rot at this company than just swapping out a new CEO. But this is the new Intel CEO. And he comes in this year and he's gonna turn Intel around. But Trump, this month, August, has some things to say about him. Trump says this guy is highly conflicted and should resign over his ties to China. I think Trump is saying that because he looks Asian. Because he's not from China. Yeah, I mean, he's invested in some Chinese companies, don't get me wrong, but he's not from China. He's Malaysian, so. But anyway, Trump says this, and then notably says, the CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There is no other solution to this problem. Now, this is a very important statement because this is this month. This month, Trump has said there is no other solution to the Intel CEO being conflicted than him resigning. That's it. We figured it out. There's only one solution. Now, this caused a bit of a chaos at Intel. Intel's leadership was in a panic. The president of the United States is saying we have to have our CEO step down and then we're infiltrated by the Chinese. So they said, okay, they talked to some experts, some Trump experts, and they decided they've learned the following. Trump loves meeting with CEOs, even those who he's attacked publicly. Trump just likes deal making. He likes being a mover and shaker. He likes being personally involved. People come in, they talk to him, he can get something out of them. He likes this, okay? So they decide they're gonna fly out this CEO to go meet with Trump to convince him that he's not a Chinese spy and the US government has a long-term interest in bolstering Intel. Surprise, surprise, it works. Days before, there's no other solution than him resigning. After one meeting, now he's like this. He came in, he saw me, we talked for a while. I liked him a lot. I thought he was very good. I said, you know what? I think the United States should be given 10% of Intel. And he said, I would consider that. So a massive pivot. From a few days ago, you're like, he's got to get out. And so now you meet him once. Oh, you know what? I love Intel and you, and I want 10%. Between this calling him to resign and this meeting, there was one middle part where Trump said, hey, what if we got TSMC to buy 49% of Intel? Because TSMC is good and Intel is bad. So we'll just sell 49%, we'll force them actually to buy 49% of Intel and they'll make Intel good. Now, the problem with this, I mean, there's a couple. One of the main ones is that TSMC has zero interest in doing this. They don't want to do it, and you can't have the American president just tell them who to buy or who to invest in, because no, they don't want Intel. So then Trump was threatening to put higher tariffs on Taiwan as a whole unless TSMC, a private company, bought Intel. It was just getting messy. So thankfully, the Intel CEO charmed him in this meeting and went with this 10% plan. So then Trump tweeted this: it's my great honor to report the United States of America now fully owns and controls 10% of Intel. Again, I'll get into it. I'll get into the whole socialism, capitalism, whatever. People have got so many things tied into that. I'll just explain why I think this might be a bad idea, okay? A great American company that has an even more incredible future. I negotiated this deal with Lip-Bu-Tan, the highly respected, by the way, this is weeks after saying he was a Chinese spy that needs to step down. He's actually the highly respected chief executive officer of the company. The United States paid nothing for these shares. Now, I highlighted this part in red, and we're gonna skip ahead real quick. This part's highlighted in red because it's called a lie. The United States bought these shares. It is unclear why Trump said the United States did not pay anything for this stake. The government bought 433 million shares at $20.47 each. They spent $9 billion, taxpayer money. We took the money and we bought it. They certainly didn't give them to us. It's a public company. They can't even without printing more. I mean, we bought them. I just want that to be clear. I mean, you could say that's the money they used. I do want to, give the full picture here. So there was $9 billion, this amount of money, that was left over from Biden's CHIPS Act. And the reason it was left over is because Biden's CHIPS Act had certain milestones that Intel had to reach to unlock the money. Intel did not reach the milestones. Intel was slow and shitty. So there's money left over, $9 billion in the CHIPS Act that wasn't distributed. So Trump said, I'll use that money because it's basically free. It's kind of girl math. Because you could use it, right, to pay down debt. Like you said. You said kill the law and use the excess funds to pay down debt. You could use leftover money if you wanted to do that. But instead, you're like, now it's already allocated. We'll just use it to buy 10% of Intel. The shares are now valued at approximately $11 billion. This is a great deal for America and also a great deal for Intel. Building leading edge semiconductors and chips, which is what Intel does, I wouldn't say leading edge, but yes, they do this, is fundamental to the future of our nation. And I do agree it's important. At the end of the day, the core part of this that you have to concede on is that it's really risky having so much of the economy routed through Taiwan, which is again at odds with its closest neighbor, China, at all times. Like it's just risky. You really do want to diversify chip production outside of Taiwan. It makes sense. All right, I will give that. I don't know about this strategy, but I will give that. Now, criticism of this deal came in pretty quickly, and it came in from all over the political spectrum. Republicans, I will say, a lot of them don't say anything. They'll never bring anything up. But many of them who had previously criticized Obama, for example, for taking stakes in banking companies after 2008 and 2009, also criticized, like a Rand Paul might have criticized this. Gavin Newsom said, all hail Chairman Trump with his glorious 10% purchase of Intel. The Socialist Republic of America enters a bold new era of government-run businesses. I mean, it just is a departure from normal ways of doing business. And I will say this, someone I do deeply respect had a positive statement on this, and I want to give the upside here. I want to give a fair, nuanced take. I respect Bernie Sanders quite a bit, and he actually, I would say it wasn't like overwhelming support, but he supported this. He favored the Trump plan to take stake in Intel or chip makers. And he said this, if microchip companies make a profit from the generous grants they receive from the federal government, the taxpayers of America have a right to a reasonable return on that investment. And I just want to explain why I might disagree, even though I vouch for, I fully support Bernie Sanders' character, and I think maybe there's something I'm not seeing here. There's a couple things that go wrong when you have the government owning particular shares in a certain one company. Number one is that if there is ever like a government contract that you would like to be awarded to the best company, the company that can do it for the best price or the most innovative, in historical examples, it'll go to the company that the government owns 10% of. There's a big conflict of interest. It's like picking winners and losers. Because Trump has personally negotiated this deal and gotten us 10% of Intel, he can't allow Intel to do worse. He needs to favor them for future government contracts. So that's the first part. But the second part is like with this statement. So actually I deleted the statement. I would say that if Intel, for example, whatever the corporate tax rate is, which should be higher, I agree. If Intel makes $100 million, right, and we tax 15%, if we have a goal, which is like Intel build something in America, bring American jobs, and at the same time, Intel grows to $200 million and we tax 15%, that is the return to the taxpayers of America. The return is the taxes. If you want to make a return on a company, you raise the corporate tax rate so that they're all competing and we get a piece of all of them. You don't pick one and grab 10% of just that one. You know what I'm saying? The taxes is how you get the return. Then you spend it on America. You can spend it on healthcare, you can spend it on whatever. I agree. I think the goals of what you want to spend it on are good, but the idea that you're supposed to seize it, I just find it to be less compelling. However, larger story, again, I don't want to say Bernie Sanders was a massive supporter of this. He just had one statement. Mainly it's a Trump idea. And Trump said, to me, people like me, if you're a critic of this deal, why are stupid people unhappy? And I got owned. I realized I'm stupid. I'm stupid for for being critical. And he doesn't only want to stop here. He has found this to be so successful, such a good idea, that he wants more deals like Intel's. He will make deals like Intel's all day long. And I think Trump truly doesn't even care about the long-term strategy. I think he just likes the deals. He likes CEOs coming in and being at his mercy and him able to boss them around. And I think he just likes doing these deals. They're all one-off. And I think he's just going to start grabbing American stakes in different companies. But the problem is, again, when you have this, you end up with a situation where the only way to win is to go through the president, to go through the government. Okay, you can't win by making the better product. You can't win by offering it at a cheaper price. You can only win by having the government put their thumb on the scale to your benefit. And I think that is a dangerous precedent, a dangerous long-term route to go. It's this real crony situation where you have to go to the mob boss to get your win. So he's planning many more deals and he hopes to get as much as I can. I want to get the direct quote here. His new economic strategy is an attempt to get as much as I can. I don't see a long-term big strategy here. I'm just confused by it. Okay, so all this is to be said is that at the end of the day, there's not a lot of other options than Intel in America. So maybe it's a situation where you got to make do with what we got. Maybe that's the horse we have and we have to ride it. Intel sucks, but we can't get a new competitor in time. So fine, whatever. But I just want to say that this strategy of getting rid of the milestone plan with the grants that the CHIPS Act had and going to just buying 10% is not even guaranteed to work. It's just more good money after bad. The problem is Intel is still a bad company. Trump will likely need to find more ways to support Intel, not wanting it to fail on his watch. And again, that's the quicksand you find yourself in when the government tries to pick a winner. Once you've bought a stake in the company, you can't let it fail because it's embarrassing. So now you have to throw more government money after this money pit, this failing bad company. And you end up in this quagmire of lighting money on fire. Intel needs a lot of help and the US needs Intel. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but now we're tied to them. And the first immediate reaction of Intel when they had to make a disclosure on this new stake is that it's probably gonna hurt our sales. We're already doing bad, and this US government stake is going to hurt our sales. Now, why would that hurt your sales? Well, here's why. Sales outside the US are 76% of Intel's revenue. 30% come from China. China is no longer interested in buying Intel chips if they are 10% owned by the US government. It's too risky. So instead of helping the company, it's likely going to, at least in the short to medium term, severely hurt them. Again, I find this whole concept poor. and I have some other things on Trump I want to talk about this week that I think are more serious. And I think this week I'm trying to make the case that, guys, this guy might be a bad president. This might sound crazy. He might be a bad president. Because it takes a while for economic stuff to make our lives worse, you can look at this and laugh. And I am laughing. But more of this will lead to I think a material reduction in American innovation and the amount of money going around in this country. I do agree with that. There's also some more serious stuff we're gonna talk about later this week. But this for now is what I want to say. I think the US buying 10% stakes in companies or more is a bad idea. And I just want to give the reason why. I think we should tax companies more, but we should force them to compete. And then no matter who wins, we get our cut and we spend it on our citizens. That would be the dream. Buying pieces of them and having them be tied directly to the government is a recipe for corruption. A recipe for corruption and a recipe for scandal and a recipe for disaster is what I think. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you. Let me know in the clip channel if you disagree. Goodbye.